Sometimes I wonder why Solomon is considered wise, because I don't sometimes think he's very wise. Because when you are wise, how do you marry 700 women and have 300 concubines, and these women persuade you to worship other gods?
I'm a king, yes.
So let me say that I'm glad to be in this congregation to share my thoughts with you on the chosen subject, finishing strong. But during my short conversation with the senior pastor, we had some informal conversations during which I told the senior pastor and the pastor here that I consider myself to be a Christian of Berea. These were Christians who, when he had preached, they would go back and read the scripture for themselves and question. During that conversation, I told the senior pastor and pastor that if I had lived during the days of Christ and I was one of his disciples, I would have been Thomas or Philip. I would have told Christ after his crucifixion and resurrection, I want to see. I would have said to Christ, we have lived with you, I now want to see the Father. I told them that doubt is the mother of faith. I then told them that Christ during his life told us about the Pharisees who, when they pray for long hours that they may be praised of men. If you very carefully follow Christ, his most important messages were not delivered for more than 3 minutes. And I asked them to go and test. How long is the Lord's Prayer? How long is the Sermon on the Mount? How long is the parable of the Good Samaritan? Christ hit the point. And I suggested to them, Christ knew that human concentration can only be captured for so long. I'm therefore prefacing my presentation in the knowledge that I'll not speak for too long, in keeping with Christ's own prescription. Let us, as Christians, search our souls. Search our souls because it is important to remember that we live in very difficult days. We live in days when it is not so very easy to know which message is the right message. We live in days that are actually mentioned in the Bible. If you read the book of Matthew, at chapter 24, verse 24, Matthew says that in these days there shall arise many Christs, and they shall perform wonders, and that if it were possible, they would deceive even the very elect. We live in days where those who claim to be Christians are attracted to miracle workers. But we forget the message of Christ when he tells us that there will come a time when such as those will come to him, and they'll say to him, Christ, we performed miracles in your name. And he'll tell them, I know you not. We live in times which are spoken of in Paul's letter to Timothy, when he says that in the last days, people will be lovers of themselves. There'll be a kind of godliness which is not in keeping with the message of God. But he then tells us that just as Jannes and Jambres troubled Moses in the desert, their days will be numbered. God makes worthy those whom he calls. He does not call the worthy. And when today, therefore, we talk about finishing strong, we've got to look at the Bible and ask ourselves what it is that is divinely ordained. You know, I imagine to myself, when the hosts of heaven are sitting up there and they make this decision after they have created everything, and the book of Genesis says that the world was void and without form. And then they make the decision that they will create man in their own image. And Adam is created in God's own image. And the Jewish word for the soil is Adamah, from which the name Adam is then derived. And when you read the Bible, some theologians actually say that if you read the first segment of creation, he says we created them in our own image. And when you read the Talmud, it is suggested that in fact, and this is in Christian tradition almost blasphemous and heretical, that Adam's first wife was Lilith. And then it goes to the second level of creation, and it says that God saw that it was not good for Adam to be alone. And it is then that Eve is taken out of his flesh, and he says, "Woman, out of my flesh." They started very well. They worshiped God very well. But they did not finish well. And because they did not finish well, that is why we are suffering today. Even the heavens have never been happy because they did not finish well. God had to send his son, who was humiliated and persecuted and crucified because Adam and Eve started well, but did not finish well. And if you read the story again, and you meet Abraham. Abraham was a worshiper of many gods. He lived in Ur of the Chaldeans, which is modern day Iraq. And it is of him that is said in the Bible that he was God's friend. He brings him out. And to demonstrate how friendly God was to him, the story is told on the decision that was made in the heavens that Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed. And we are told that there is a conference and a conversation in the heaven whether that information should be revealed to Abraham or not. And the decision is made by the three angels to tell him that they are going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And they tell him, and he asked, what about if there are 50 good people in Sodom and Gomorrah? And he says, if there are 50, we shall not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says, what about if there are 45? And we are told that if there are 45, he will not destroy it. And he proceeds and says, what about if there are 20 and 10? ultimately Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed. Abraham started poorly but ended well. And you can go on. And you look at the story of Noah and move pretty quickly and go to the story of Moses. I do not know which movies you watch, but I would commend to you to watch Cecil B. DeMille's movie made in 1956, The Ten Commandments. And there are many movies, The Ten Commandments, but these I commend, with Charlton Heston as Moses, with John Derek as Joshua, and Yul Brynner as Ramesses. And it tells you and dramatizes the story of Moses. How does Moses begin? He begins at a time when a decree has been given by the Pharaoh that all the children of Israel must be destroyed. But by divine intervention, Moses is rescued, and he lives in the palace of the Pharaoh. And if you look at the dramatization, he is brought up as a child of the Pharaoh, although he is the sister's son. Then he kills a Jew according to the dramatization, and goes through the desert and lives in the house of Jethro, where he meets his wife Sephora, or Zipporah, as we sometimes say. And when you read that story in the dramatization, on the day that he meets God, he goes to the mountain of the Lord, and there is a burning bush. And of course, he doubts. And when he is sent out, he says that I am not of a fleeting tongue. And God tells him, you are Aaron, thy brother, shall speak for you. He then goes back to the Pharaoh and tells the Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, let my people go. And they are tested. 10 miracles. And ultimately they leave. And in that dramatization, one of the most interesting things is when the Pharaoh, after the 10th miracle, the Israelites are about to cross the Red Sea, and he sends his hosts to go and attack them. And Nefertiti, who is the Pharaoh's wife, tells him to go back. And of course, the story is known. When he comes back, the Egyptian hosts have been drowned. And he comes back, and Nefertiti asked him, where is Moses? And Ramesses, he says of Moses, his God is God. And then he crosses the Red Sea and goes to the mountain of the Lord and receives the 10 commandments. And as he is up there for 40 days and 40 nights, the sons of Korah, Jannes and Jambres, persuade Aaron and Miriam to make an image of gold. And they worship it. And when he is coming down, he hears some noise, and in the dramatization, there is Joshua with him. And Joshua tells him, there is noise down there. And suggests to him that they may have been attacked. And Moses says, no, those are the voices of joy and revelry. The people have sinned against God. And he holds the 2 tablets, and in the dramatization, he says, those who are with the Lord, come to me, and those who are against the Lord and cannot live by the law shall die by the law. Moses started poorly and finished well. And that is why he is celebrated as a great man. The story is not how you begin, but how you end. And if you ever doubt me this evening, go and read the book of Ecclesiastes at chapter 7, verse 8, where it is recorded that the beginning, the end of a thing is better than its beginning. When we are awarding people for races, we do not praise them because they started well. We praise them because they finished well. And the story of the Bible is about how you finish, not how you begin. When I read the Bible and I look at some of the incidents in the Bible, one of them is recorded in the second book of Samuel. And this is a story that you know. It's a story where Nathan visits David. And he has a story to tell David the king. And he tells a story, he tells David, you know, there was a kingdom where there was a rich man with many cows and goats and all those things. And in that kingdom there was also a poor man who had an ewe of a lamb which he kept as if it was his daughter. Then one day there was a visitor in that kingdom, and this rich man took the ewe of a lamb of the poor man and slaughtered it. And then David says, if there is such a man in my kingdom, he shall be punished. And then Nathan says, oh king, that man is you. It is you who has taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite and caused him to be killed by the sword of the Ammonites. The sword shall never leave your house. But even before that, he says that if you had wanted anything, I'm the one who delivered you from Saul. I'm the one who delivered you. And if you have wanted more, I took Saul's wives and gave them unto you and all his property. And if you had wanted more, I would have given them to you. But because you have done that, the sword shall never leave your house. You who are congregants, has the sword ever left the house of David? As I speak to you now, the sword is in the house of David. But David started poorly, but still God says that he's a man after his heart. So that he composes the Psalms, which we call the Zaburi or Zaburi in Arabic. He finishes well. But his son Solomon does not finish well. Sometimes I wonder why Solomon is considered wise. Because I don't sometimes think he's very wise. Because when you are wise, how do you marry 700 women and have 300 concubines, and these women persuade you to worship other gods? But God determines wisdom in ways that I cannot begin to fathom. But from a human perspective, I doubt Solomon's wisdom. He did not end well. And indeed, it is because of his undoing that the kingdom is divided. He did not end well. The history is about ending well. The story of Elijah and Elisha is a person who walked with God and he anointed a successor. Ending well means that you must also have a successor. You must mentor others. We live in a country here where there are individuals who never want to leave the stage. You must know when to leave the stage. And that is why we are told in the Bible that the spirit of Elijah came into Elisha. So even the pastors here, senior pastors, you must not remain senior to the grave. You must anoint others. As the saying goes, the old goats must die for the young goats to thrive. That is the message when I read the Bible. I do not know how you read the Bible, but that is how I read it. And you read this Bible and you see consistently that the beginning is not what is important. The end is what is important. Look at the New Testament now that I have dwelt for so long on the Old Testament. Look at how Christ chooses his disciples. He did not go out there to choose the Pharisees. He did not choose Nicodemus. He did not choose Gamaliel. He goes to the lake and he sees Peter and Andrew, who are fisher people, and he calls them and tells them, you come that you shall be fishers of men. And look at how they are troubled. Look at Peter denying Christ. Look at Peter doubting. When you read the Bible, there is that portion where Christ asks of Peter, who do people say I am? And some say you are John the Baptist. Some say you are Elijah. And then, but who do you say that I am? And he says, you are the Son of God. And he tells him, Peter, that information has not come from you. It has been revealed to you by God. In other words, we are being told, as Christians, that you must relegate your human wisdom and let God dominate your thought processes. Then you get the right message. So this Peter, who denies Christ, even when he was forewarned, and therefore should have been forearmed, what happens? He denies him, but he repents. And it is about him that Christ says, Simon Bar-Jonah, upon this rock I shall build my church. Christian tradition says that Peter then went to Rome, and when he died by crucifixion, he said he should be crucified upside down, because he could not be crucified in the same manner that Christ was crucified. He started poorly and ended well. Even the gate that you, ladies and gentlemen, want to pass through when you go to heaven, I'm told that he is the one who will be there. You had better remember him fondly and speak about him fondly. Otherwise, you will not see the great white throne. He started poorly and ended well. Then there is another one who started well and ended poorly. Judas the Iscariot. Started very well, on an equal footing with everybody else. But where does he end? 30 pieces of silver. He repents. Then he hangs himself. And today, how do we remember him? When you talk of a person who has betrayed you, say he's a Judas. He has given the English language and human vocabulary a word because he ended poorly. You must always ask yourself, how do you end? When Christ was crucified, many of those disciples thought that Christ had come with a kingdom. That is why the mother of the two sons of Zebedee, when she approaches Christ, says, let my two sons, one to sit on your left and one to sit on your right. And what does Christ say? As to who sits on my left and who sits on my right is not me to say, it is for my Father in heaven. They thought so. That when they came if you are to contemporize it, they would be cabinet ministers with protruding stomachs and cars with sirens. That is what they thought. But what does Christ say them? That the kingdom that I am come for is not this kingdom. It is upstairs. And when Christ dies, you know, those individuals, they are disappointed. It's the women who go to the tomb. They are not even there. It's Joseph of Arimathea who donates a tomb. All his 12 disciples are gone. It's the women who go there. Mary Magdalene. They are not there. They are doubting. Thomas is saying, show me. The others have gone back fishing. They are fishing. Peter is fishing. Andrew is fishing. All of them. And then an incident occurs. The journey to Emmaus. And then they are on the day of the Pentecost. These little cowards. They were cowards. Like the Twi in Ghana say, when you run after a coward for too long, you'll meet his courage. So they go there, and there is the day of the Pentecost, and they speak in tongues, and suddenly these cowards become courageous, and the world has never been the same again. It is because of cowards turned into courageous men that you are assembled here. There is now new theology in the world which is heretical, where we treat the church of God as if it were a casino, that when you pay tithe and offerings, then all blessings will be poured upon you. That is not the message of Christ. When you carry the message and the cross of Christ, from that day you are targeted by the devil and your lot is suffering, but for the intervention of God. And that is why Christ says, many are called, but few are chosen. You remember the story of the rich man, the young rich man. He comes to Christ and he says, all the laws of Moses, I have followed them. And Christ tells him, yes, I know. But now I want you to do one little thing. Go yonder and sell all the things and follow me. And then the young man walks away dejected, and Christ now turns to the crowd and tells them that it shall be easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. Christ is not condemning riches, no. He's simply saying that don't allow riches to be your God, because it is vanity of vanities. This man, whom you call Paul of Tarsus, was a great man. He learned under the feet of some of the greatest thinkers of the day. Gamaliel. Gamaliel in modern days was a professor of law, of theology. And it is under his feet that Paul learned. And what did Paul do? He persecuted Christians. He killed them. The first martyr in Christendom is Saint Stephen. It is Paul who presided over his martyrdom. It is this same Paul who on his journey to Damascus meets Christ. And after that, this man who was called Saul becomes Paul, and you are here are courtesy of him. The Christian version that you talk about is courtesy of Paul. It is Paul who goes into the land of the Gentiles. It is Paul who for the first time his followers in Antioch are called Christians. The followers of Christos in Antioch. So you are Christians because of Paul, the killer of the followers of Christ. It is this Paul who writes letters to Timothy, to the Galatians, to the Colossians, to the Ephesians, to the Romans. He started poorly but ended well. Are you Christians? Do you claim to be Christians? Many of you here are baptized, are you not? And you remember on the day of your baptism, you said that you rejected the devil with all his works. Have you rejected the devil with all his works? By deed or thought? Since morning, how many commandments have you disobeyed? Have you not coveted somebody's dress, somebody's wife or husband? Have you not? Have you not in your thoughts thought of murdering somebody or harming somebody this morning, since this morning? Unconsciously, have you not had other gods? This is who we are. The book of Habakkuk. How many of you have read the book of Habakkuk? Now look, in this congregation of Christians, less than 0.01% have read the book of Habakkuk. Yet I consider him, he is considered to be a minor prophet. But he's the man who questions God like we all do, but ultimately surrenders to God. There is a sermon that I want you to go and listen to this evening or tomorrow morning. It was a sermon that was delivered by Billy Graham in Chicago, the United States in 1971. Who is Jesus? He's one of the most powerful sermons that I've ever heard preached by man. Who is Jesus? Some say he was the Son of God, Billy Graham says. Some say that he was a god. Some say that he was a madman. Some say that he was a charlatan. But who is Jesus? Who is he? Who is he? That 2,000 years down the line, you are here congregating and praying in his name. Who is he? You never met him. He was a Jew who, according to the Bible, never traveled for more than 50 kilometers. He was in Nazareth, he was in Bethlehem, he was in Jericho, he was around Galilee. He did not have internet, he did not have Instagram, he did not have WhatsApp, no phone. But today you hear, you say that he has taken your life. Who is he? He only preached for 3 years. The 18 years between age 12 and 30, we do not know where he was. Who is he? Who is he? Who is he? He's mysterious. Because God must be mysterious. You know, one of the things in the Bible that strikes me the most is the story of John the Baptist. This John the Baptist, who is Christ's cousin, the son of Elizabeth, and Zachariah, says he's a forerunner for Christ. And when Jesus is being baptized at the Jordan River, and Christ approaches him, and there is a dove and says, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." This John the Baptist, when he is arrested by Herodias and he is in jail, he doubts. And he sends his 2 disciples to Christ to go and ask the following question. Go and ask of him whether he is the one or we should wait for another. Do you remember that? Whether he is the one or we should wait for another. And how does Christ reply? Go and tell him that the blind are seeing, that the lame are walking, that the lepers are clean, and that the message is being preached to the whole world. After that, we are not told what happens. John's head is cut and given to Salome. That is John who saw him, who baptized him. Yet he tells us by faith. He tells us, you who say, somebody says, good man, he says, why do you call me good? It is only God in heaven that is good. You remember the story of that lady who is an adulterer, an adulteress? They come and say, according to the law of Moses, she should be stoned. And Christ is writing and says, yes, those of you who are without, he amongst you who is without sin, cast the first stone. And he's looking down. And after a while he raises his head and they have all gone. And he asks the lady, where are your accusers? Go forth and sin no more. Go forth and sin no more. That message is preached to us on a daily basis, weekly basis. The good pastor says, go and sin no more. But we sin. In our country particularly, we sin. Greed is our creed. We go to the offices and we ask for bribes. In this country, we judge people on the basis of their tribe. Yet Christ says there are no Jews, no Gentiles. How are you finishing? You are here. How do you intend to finish the journey? Are you a Sunday Christian who repeats the words of the Lord's Prayer and the Nicene Creed and the prayer of St. Chrysostom as if you are a robot? Do you internalize the message? When you read the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor, do you internalize? Are you Christians who will be judged by their fruits? Because your fruits is what tells you who you are. A mango will only beget a mango, an orange only an orange. So today, I do not want to be like the Pharisees of old who speak for too long. I want to be in keeping with Christ himself. That the message is, how do you finish? You know, when I'm traveling to Nakuru, I count the number of churches, church buildings. They have even run short of names now. Helicopter or something. When you travel to Nigeria in Africa, I call it the Jesus industry. They have converted Jesus into an industry for extortion through intimidation of people. That is not the Church of Christ. That is how I understand Christ's message, that many are called but few are chosen. That is how I understand Paul's letter to Timothy, that in the last day there shall be forms of Christianity, and there are those forms of Christianity. They have made prediction. The Millerites said that the world would end in 1844. It did not. Why were they saying it? Yet The Christ himself says, of the last days, not even the Son knows. He's hidden even to the Son.
I'm a king, oh, yes, I'm a king, oh, I think I'm a king, oh.